linguistic system is their native languages from elders in their community. Right. In other words, what we can say that language is socially transmitted from one generation to the next. Right? It is socially transmitted from one generation to another, and a child reared in isolation does not acquire language. If some child, although he does have inborn ability to learn to acquire language, but if he is there in isolation, so he will not be able to acquire language. He will never acquire any type of language. Why? So it shows that it is transmitted. The language is transmitted to him from community or from his elders. So this very thing is called cultural transmission, and it is design feature of language. It is also called traditional transmission. Right. Next thing next we have duality of patterning. Like it means that meaningful messages are made up of distinct smaller meaningful units, words basically, and morpheme, and which themselves are made up of distinct smaller meaningless units. Right? Then we have learnability. It is also referred as like the feature of language that speakers of a language can learn a new language. Right? Language is something which can be learned. It is design feature of every language that it can be learned, whether it is French, whether it is Greek, whatever language it is, it can be learned. So learnability is another design feature. Then we have prevarication is another feature. Like it could be understood as the capacity of linguistic message to be false or meaningless in the logical sense. Right? It could be false. You can lie. That is also a design feature of language. Next feature is reflexivity. It means language is used to talk about the world and our states of mind. It can also be used to talk about itself. Right? What does it mean? It means that we can use language to talk about the world, like whatever is going on in the world, whatever, and we can talk about our own state of mind, like whatever is going on in my mind whatsoever, but how I'm feeling whatsoever is there, means I can use language for different things. But one of the quality of language is this, that it can be used to talk about itself. Like language, we can talk about any language by using language. Right? What the thing is, if we are talking about it, let's say here is an example, that if we say that Henry James used very complex sentences. Now what are complex sentences? It is about language. Right? It is about language. So when language is used to talk about language, that very thing is called reflexivity, that design feature. Like here, even now we are talking about the design features of language, means we are using language to talk about language. So this is design feature of language. Like this reflexivity, this is called, this feature of language is called reflexivity. So this was about design features of language. Right? I will repeat them once and then we will go to the next topic. We have talked about design features of language. What are design features? These are those characteristics which are common in every language, and they set apart a human language from animal language. Then we have talked about Charles Socket, that he had given some design features of language. First one was vocal auditory channel, right? That it is something like someone says something and other person receives it, right? Then we had broadcast transmission and directional reception, like someone says something, it moves in all direction and the receiver thinks that it is coming from its origin. Then we had then the next very well, it was transitoriness, right? Rapid fading, we have discussed rapid fading over here. Then we had talked about interchangeability of language. Then we had talked about total feedback, right? That someone is saying something, so he can monitor it too, as he does listen it too. Then we had specialization, that language is specialized for it. The purpose of language is communication. Then we have talked about semanticity. Then we had talked about arbitrariness. Then we had talked about discreteness, displacement, productivity, culture transmission, duality of patterning, learnability, prevarication, reflexivity. This was about design features of language. Now let us talk about functions of language. What are functions of language? So language is basically a tool which is used by speakers to perform various tasks, right? So these tasks are called functions of language. Here what will I'm repeating, like the function, whatever task the language perform, that is called function. Now let us see what is there. So when we look at the history of linguistics, so we can find so many people, so many renowned people who have been working, who had worked on functions of functions of language. So few names of few of here: Roman Jacobson, Bronsley Law, Michael Halliday, Finch. So many other names are also there, but it means so many people have worked on this topic, that the which is called the function of language. Here what we can see when we will discuss functions of language, so aspects of language, what we can see that these can be the functions. We can study them like functions in two aspects. One is journal, which is also called micro aspects, and the other is meta or micro aspect. What is journal or micro aspect? These refer to the particular individual uses of language in a society. This was something given by Finch, right? Finch in 1998. He has listed 7 journal micro functions. Journal are micro functions, like we have said that there are micro aspects and macro aspects, right? Micro functions and macro functions. So here we are talking about micro functions first. So in micro functions, what are there? These are physiological function, phatic function, recording function, identifying function, reasoning function, communicating function, and pleasure. Now let us talk about them one by one. So first of all, physiological function. These are micro, I'm again repeating, we are talking about micro functions of language. So first one is physiological function. What is physiological function? It is used, like language is used for releasing physical and nervous energy, right? How? Like here the simple thing is that sometimes, here there is a picture, what we do, sometimes we use language, we use our sounds only to relax ourselves, to release our physical and nerves energy. How? Like sometimes when you are watching a match on the TV, so what happens, you start giving instructions to the players, you start shouting, you start getting excited, you start making noise. What is that? You know it has nothing to do with the players, but what you are doing, you are only releasing your own physical and nerves energy. Fine. So this type of function is called physiological function of language, right? And sometimes even the bad language or abuses, which when we use bad language for someone, so what happens, nothing happens to that person, but what happens to us, that we release our own energy in that very way, right? So the bad language, curse words, these are they also are the, they can and through them we can, like we are like fulfilling the physiological function of the language, right? Then comes the phatic function. phatic function. What is phatic function? It expresses our willingness to be sociable. Our willingness to be sociable. What does it mean? Like what are these? These help to negotiate the start and end of exchange, whether the spoken or written. Like when we say hello, hi, how are you, respected sir, right? What are these things? These are only for being sociable. Sometimes it is when we meet someone, we say, how do you do? So what is this how do you do or how are you? We are basically not very much interested that how he is. Like even some we just say it for the sake of being sociable, for the sake of being saying something. Fine. So phatic function is something which is like used we use language to socialize. Next we have recording function. What is recording function? Like it is like the use of language to make a durable record of the things that ought to be remembered. Right? We use language to record those things which are supposed to be remembered, which should be remembered. But like if we look at it, so the most significant function behind the development of language from being an oral medium to becoming a written one means this recording function was something due to which like it might be the language has become written one because people wanted to record the thing, right? It could be a short term record or it could be a long history of someone, but recording function is something to make a durable record of things that are to be remembered. This is recording function of language. Next we have reasoning function. Reasoning function.